Hey, and welcome back. In today's episode of Off the Beaten Path, I wanted to change things up a bit and take a look back at the past 10 episodes I've been releasing through this year. Whether it's a drummer's home studio for teaching and recording, or a workshop for building instruments, I've always been fascinated with the spaces we create to suit our specific needs as drummers. I've been really fortunate to visit a variety of different spaces through the Midwest over the past year, and I'm so thankful that all of you out there continue to watch and support the videos I create. And although this video will be the end of Season 1, I'm excited to announce that I'll be continuing this series in 2024. So let's take a look where this all started for me. I thought it would be appropriate for the first episode to take a look at my own space that I've built for teaching, recording, and working on drums. Over the last 3 or 4 years creating videos on YouTube, I've had a lot of people reach out to me asking if I could do a studio tour and share about how I built my space. When I bought this house almost 9 years ago, one of my top priorities was finishing off this basement so that I could have a place to keep my drums. I put a ton of effort into doing most all of this work myself and making it cost effective at the same time. And after 6 to 7 years of making tweaks and adjustments to get it working just right for me, my hope is that by sharing this space, it's helpful and inspiring to some of you out there looking to create a space for yourself. One of my favorite aspects about my space is the private entrance from the garage. This allows students to let themselves in for lessons, and the musicians I'm working with to come right on down for rehearsals. Having a nice waiting area for the people coming and going, and its own dedicated bathroom has been a real bonus, but it's certainly not a necessity for you out there looking to do the same thing. Another one of my favorite aspects about my own studio, again, has nothing to do with the drums, and that's my desk and workspace that I have right here. I think having a desk that is comfortable to work at for a long time is super important and helps me be most efficient in my work. I'd say between 70 to 90% of the time I'm down here, it's sitting at this desk, and that could be sending emails out for gigs and preparations, or editing video and audio for my YouTube channel. Now, as much as the private entrance, the lounge, and the desk space is really important to me, I know that most of the viewers out there were really excited to see my studio space where I actually play drums. I'm lucky to have a fairly large room to play in, and despite the low ceilings, it sounds really great. I have a variety of kits at my disposal that I can very quickly grab and change out whenever I need to, whether that's for a specific recording project, a rehearsal, or for the lessons I'm teaching. Most of the time I like to leave this space set up for teaching, as it's what I do most often in here, but it doesn't take me much time to swap things out and get mics and cables run if I need to do a recording session. Based by the views on this video, it seems that a lot of you enjoyed seeing this space, and I'm glad that I was able to finally share it with you in a more thoughtful way. I'm not sure that enough has changed over the last year to warrant an updated studio tour video, but maybe in 2025 or some other time down the road I'll do an update. In February of this year, this series really got started when I went to visit my friend Josh Breslow of Breslow Custom Drums. Josh is based a little bit outside of Milwaukee and has been a huge supporter of me kicking off this series for years. I wanted to make sure that he was the first to include in this series because I think he's doing something really unique. He's taking a lot of cheaper or orphan drums and repurposing them into instruments that can still be played, but are really special works of art. Getting a chance to walk through his showroom that he has in his basement and have him talk about all the different concepts he's executed onto these different kits was really fascinating for me to see. And in addition to being an all-around great host for this series, Josh also provided me with the name Off the Beaten Path. As I was trying to get this series started without any experience to showcase my work, it was honestly a challenge to get people to trust me in shooting their space, but Josh was super open and kind and willing to let me learn on the fly as I shot his space. The next episode I was able to release in March was with a drum shop based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, Klash Drums. I was out in Eau Claire in the fall of 2022 and had a day off where I knew I'd be able to make the trip out to the Twin Cities, and had reached out to a few different people hoping I could shoot their space, and unfortunately one of them fell through last minute. I reached out to Klash Drums about a day before I wanted to come out and shoot their space, and again, without any experience to show my work, they were super kind and willing to let me do so. I decided to get to the store right as they open, around 10 a.m., and I was blown away that even as they were opening their doors, everyone working in the store was busy and could barely find time to accommodate what I was trying to do. Most of the music stores and drum shops that I've been to over the years are just 1 or 2 people working, but this place was run like a machine with 7 or 8 people working, all busy throughout the day. I really appreciated getting to talk to each one of them and seeing their different role in the company, from Jeremy the owner, to Eric who managed the shipping and sales, to Todd who did all the repairs and work in the basement, to Adam who was teaching lessons upstairs, and to Timothy who was handling all of the marketing and social media side of things. One of the biggest things I took away through this entire episode was something Todd told me when we were talking about working on vintage drums and the importance of recycling.
We're kind of a unique business in that most of our stuff is a crime of opportunity. We order some new stuff, but we don't really order a lot of new drum parts. In today's vernacular, this is a very green business. We're recycling all of this stuff that would have gone into the landfill or been junked or scrapped. I never set out to be green, but it turns out this is a very green activity. Yeah.
I'd never really thought about repairing drums in this way, but I think he nailed it right on the head, that we're doing something that's good for the environment, and instead of throwing these old instruments away and just moving on to something new, bringing them back to life and making them usable for years to come. In April, I was able to visit the home studio of one of my favorite drummers on the internet, Tim Baltus, also known as Timbo from Keno. Tim has over 40,000 followers on Instagram and has made a big name for himself in the drum community, combining his sense of humor with his great drumming work. I was really excited to share Tim's space specifically because it's a backdrop that I think a ton of people recognize based on his videos, and it's really nothing that's special or unachievable to the common person out there. Just like me, he's operating out of a basement with low ceilings in a small town in Wisconsin and not letting that hold him back from doing the work he needs to do. He had a lot of great stories to share about the equipment he's gathered, and I think that's one of the things I appreciate about this series most, the stories that go along with the different instruments we collect. In May, I was able to travel out and visit Mike Collison, who's the founder of Out of the Drawer Percussion. He's been creating cajon-like instruments for the last 10 or 15 years, a lot of it using reclaimed wood from old furniture. I was never able to meet Mike prior to shooting this video, but one of the things that really stuck out to me after spending the day with him was just his spirit and energy and positivity for what he's doing. He has a deep love for these cajon instruments and an even deeper love for education and bringing other people into his world. Again, the concept of recycling was prevalent here, using reclaimed wood, whether from old furniture on the side of a road or from a tree that had fallen down in his backyard. And for someone living in a small town in Wisconsin, it was inspiring to see all the different places across the world he's been able to send his instruments and see them be used. In June, I was able to make the trip back to Milwaukee to visit one of my good friends, Nick Lang. Nick and I have been friends for a long time, and we've had similar career arcs, both making a living in teaching, recording, and performing. Since we live and work out of different regions in the state, we don't get to see each other that often, and we've never had to be competitive with each other. I've appreciated our friendship and being able to talk openly about our careers and the ups and downs, so when Nick bought his house and asked me about my thoughts on building my own studio, I was glad to be of some assistance to him. Much like my own space, he has a private entrance for students and people coming to rehearse, a lounge and waiting area for families, a dedicated bathroom, as well as 2 uniquely different rooms, depending on what he's trying to do with his recording. And lastly, he has quite the gear collection of vintage drums and recording equipment that makes me pretty jealous. In July, I was able to go spend a day in Chicago with another longtime friend, Andrew Green. Much like Nick, Andrew and I share similar career paths, with the exception that he's working in a major market. We've communicated a lot over the last few years, and we try to run into each other every year at events like the Chicago Drum Show, but it was really great to be able to spend the day with him and learn about the work he's doing on cymbals. As much as I love tinkering and modifying drums, cymbals are really a gray area for me, so I was really impressed to see the amount of knowledge Andrew has on this craft and his willingness to share it with us. I was also extremely impressed with the level of work he's doing for notable artists like Dave King and George Flutis, and even working on one of Elvin Jones' ride cymbals. We made a point to shoot this episode back in the spring because he was actually moving out of this space that he had been in for about 7 years, and I think it was really important to share the challenges of living in a big city and finding a place that allows you to do your craft like this. In August, I changed things up a bit by visiting Zack Albetta, the touring drummer for Ain't Too Proud to Beg. As much as the mission of this series is to visit the spaces that drummers have crafted for themselves, I was really fascinated to see what life on the road for a Broadway drummer is like. Unlike the standard touring cycle, where you're visiting a new city each day, these Broadway shows typically make a stop in a city for a week, or sometimes even up to 2 weeks. It's a unique opportunity for these musicians to be able to experience a community and spend some meaningful time in a place. I've always enjoyed seeing the different setups in the pit for these drummers, because not only are they playing all the parts for the songs, but a lot of times the sound effects and other moments happening on stage as well. After getting a behind-the-scenes look at the pit and seeing the show for myself, we were able to get together another day and talk about the other side of his work with Working Drummer Podcast. Zack was kind enough to ask me to be a guest on this show for him, so if you want to listen to that episode, I'll have it linked down in the description of this video. In September, I was able to check out the home practice space of Dave McClain. Dave is a full-time touring drummer with Sacred Reich and has previously recorded and toured with Machine Head. He moved to Oshkosh a few years ago, and we've both known about each other, but were never really able to sit down and meet in person. When he first moved to town, I remember my neighbor across the street coming over and asking me if I could recommend any spaces where drummers could practice, because her friend's son had just moved to town and he was a drummer in a big metal band. At the time, I sort of dismissed it, but about a year later it all clicked that she was talking about Dave. It was really special to be able to share Dave's practice space, because even though he's touring all over the world and recording on huge albums, his space is really relatable to the common person like you or me. He has to deal with everyday problems like not disturbing his neighbors and making it all work in a house with his spouse and everyone else. I found it extremely inspiring that someone with such a successful career on such a major stage can make it work with such a bare-bones setup. For the final episode of Season 1, I was able to travel all the way to Traverse City, Michigan to visit Pete Farmer of Farmer Foot Drums. If I'm being honest, I was already traveling out here to play a wedding gig with a band I work with, but I was extremely excited when I saw that Farmer Foot Drums was only 20 minutes away from where I'd be staying. I was somewhat familiar with Farmer Foot Drums before making the trip out here, but I really didn't understand the whole mission and background about what Pete was trying to do with foot percussion. I found it fascinating talking to Pete about the different instruments he's designing, because he's not your everyday drummer, and these instruments aren't really marketed towards your standard drummer. The research and development that's gone into creating these instruments is far beyond what I could have imagined just seeing videos of him playing them, and I was extremely impressed with the amount of detail he's putting into each of these instruments. The shop that he works out of, right next to his home where he lives, may feel like a DIY setup, but as I walked through the doors and got a tour of it, it has the efficiency of a fully functioning factory. Pete is a lot further along than most DIYers working out of their garage doing things one at a time, but he still has that passion and spirit behind each instrument he creates. So in total, I've been able to visit 10 uniquely different spaces across 4 states and traveling over 2,400 miles. One of my favorite memories over the last year in regards to this Off the Beaten Path series doesn't have to deal with any one particular episode though. Back in May, when I made my annual trip to the Chicago Drum Show, I was able to reconnect with Josh Breslow, Klash Drums, Tim Baltus, and Out of the Drawer Percussion, and it was really special to be able to see all them and hear the joy that each episode has brought them. I was also able to connect with a few fans of the series, and that's certainly inspiring to me to keep pushing forward and continuing this series. Looking into 2024, I'm hoping to continue the same format of 10 episodes released monthly from January through October, so if you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear about them. Due to the financial and time investment that goes into each one of these, I'll be sticking mostly to Wisconsin, Illinois, and Minnesota, but I'm planning to make at least one trip a little bit further to shoot a few episodes in a new city. I'm super grateful to all of you who have reached out and shared how much you've enjoyed watching this series, and that's definitely enough motivation for me to keep going moving forward. If you do feel like supporting my work a little beyond that though, YouTube has a great feature called Super Thanks, where you can financially support the videos I'm making. If you've enjoyed this series and this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. And until next time, thanks.